The families of God that they give.
When it comes to the most shocking crimes, the offenders are usually the ones we least expect. But teenagers? What drives young people to take a life? Today, we will dive into shocking teenage murder cases that shocked the world. Mackenzie, 17 years of age, is guilty of murder. She was responsible for a car accident that killed not just her boyfriend, but also his friend. The deceased, Dominic Russo, her boyfriend, and his friend, Davin Flanagan, were both in the car when Sharilla crashed into the side of a commercial billboard while driving at 100 miles per hour. Both men were found dead, with Sharilla as the only survivor. Prosecutors laid down an argument that the teens had a toxic relationship and that Sharilla had already made not just threats, but violent ones against her boyfriend, with clear evidence that she had once tried to break into his house. Reports claim that Sharilla crashed the car on purpose, with a clear intention of wanting to kill her boyfriend, with his friend just a victim of circumstance. With visual evidence, the prosecutor concluded it was not an accident, but indeed intentional, stating, "You can see her driving, and then making the right turn, and then all evidence indicates that she immediately puts her foot on the pedal and drove towards a building at 100 door Melpapia." I think those really demonstrated to us that this was no accident.
You see her driving very calmly and making the right turn, and then all evidence indicates she immediately put the pedal to the metal and drove straight into a building at 100 miles per hour. I think those really demonstrated to us that this was no accident.
But it's not just that. Evidence also showed that a few days before the incident, Sharilla took the same route and cooked up a plan, which was one of the main pieces of evidence the judge used to confirm her guilt. After being found guilty, she was placed in handcuffs and then allowed to speak. Her words, "I am so deeply sorry. I hope one day you can see that I would never let this happen or do it on purpose. I wish I could remember what happened. I'm just so heartbroken."
The families of God that they give. I'm so deeply sorry. I hope one day you can see I would never let this happen or do it on purpose. I wish I could remember what happened. I'm just so sorry. I'm heartbroken. I love Dom and Davion. We were all friends, and Dom was my soulmate. I wish I could take all your pain away, and I'm so sorry. And to my family, thank you for the support and all the love you guys give. Thank you for fighting with me. I love you all so much. All right, I'm done. Thank you. Thank you.
The judge also gave a statement saying, there was no medical condition that caused this, nor was there any mechanical failure of the car. A failed suicide attempt is not a defense to murder. And Mackenzie, there is a very good likelihood that you will spend the rest of your life in prison. She was then sentenced to 15 years to life in prison. Shondell Jackson, 18, is in Milwaukee courthouse for the murder of a university student. According to reports, Jackson and his friends were out hunting for victims when they came across Potter, the deceased, as he was leaving a bar. The 21-year-old victim was a student at the University of Wisconsin-Milwaukee. Reports claimed Jackson and his friends stalked Potter before harassing him and demanding money. However, Potter had no money on him, which annoyed Jackson, and the offender pulled out a gun and shot Potter. According to police officials, Jackson fled to Mississippi a day after he murdered Potter in cold blood, but his uncle had already tipped law enforcement about the offender's whereabouts, leading to his arrest and trial. While Jackson was being escorted out of the courtroom, he did something strange and disturbing. Jackson was seen making gestures to the victim's family while also wearing a big smile. Despite his entire situation being clear to him, did he feel no remorse? Or was it just an act of fear? Moments before Jackson's sentencing, his mother had a few words to say. According to her, she first heard about the incident on TV. "When I saw it on the news, I started crying. I'm like, oh my God, I can't imagine what that mother is going through. I never had a clue that my child had anything to do with it. My son is not a monster. He is not a monster.
I saw it on the news. I even cried. I'm like, oh my God, I can't imagine what that mother is going through. I never had a clue that my child had anything to do with it. My son is not a monster. He is not a monster.
Jackson also came up with an apology, pleading to the court to spare his life. However, the court sentenced him to life imprisonment without parole, resulting in an outburst from Jackson, but he was restrained.
Human life and the need to protect the community, which I also fear for with Mr. Jackson being out in the community. I am going to go ahead on count 1, the first-degree intentional homicide conviction, and I am going to sentence Mr. Jackson to life imprisonment without possibility for extended supervision.
While Jackson was being taken away, we could hear one of his family members screaming at the victim's family, "I hate you all. I hate you all." Meanwhile, Jackson's friend pleaded guilty to acting as a lookout during the murder and theft and was sentenced to 12 years in prison.
Case rises to that level.
Aiden Fucci was just 14 when he murdered his classmate, a girl from Patriots Oak Academy who was aged 13. He reportedly stabbed her 114 times before dumping her into the woods. Her body was eventually recovered in the woods. When Fucci got arrested, he was seen taking videos in the back of a cop's car and also posting it on Snapchat.
We're having fun in a f***ing cop car.
Yep. Tristan.
What's up, guys?
Yep.
Tristan, if you f***ing walk out the damn...
When you see this in a month.
A video surfaced with his parents speaking to him in an interrogation room. That Snapchat you did was not very smart at all. You are all over the news, Aiden. This is very serious. This is your whole life. Your whole life and ours.
That Snapchat that you did was not very smart.
Now we have people want to burn our house down, our cars down. Because of that Snapchat thing you did. It's all over, you're all over the internet and everywhere. Social media.
It is on social media. You'll probably come stay with me after we get done with this. Just for your well safe being.
This is serious, man.
It's very serious.
This is no joke. This is your whole life. Your whole life.
And hers.
And ours. And your brothers and sisters. And don't forget they can't go to school tomorrow.
Why?
Because the kids will hurt them.
Prosecutors brought forward a video allegedly showing Fucci and the girl walking together right before she was murdered. Then, in the same video, Fucci was seen running away from the exact area where the body was found, stabbed 114 times. He was seen running away from that area about 90 minutes after they strolled in together. The body was found with 49 defensive wounds, 35 wounds to the head, 35 wounds to the neck, and 29 wounds to the back and shoulder, accompanied by 6 fatal wounds. What a horrifying scene. However, Fucci pleaded guilty to first-degree murder while he awaited the judge's decision, which went as follows. Having entered a plea of guilty to the crime of first-degree murder, I sentence you to life in prison. Because of your age, you are eligible for review of the sentence in 25 years.
I just want to say I plead not guilty. And that I'm sorry for the Bailey family and my family.
Okay. Okay. I'm sure that there'll be an opportunity, obviously, at sentencing.
After Fucci was sentenced, he stood still with very little movement. You truly wonder if he felt bad for such a terrible act.
Little son. This afternoon, a jury convicted Dylan Shoemaker of the highest charge possible in this case. He beat Austin Smith to death because the boy wouldn't stop crying. That child was just 23 months old. News 4's Rich Newberg is live.
Dylan Shoemaker is being convicted for second-degree murder at a Buffalo, New York courthouse. Shoemaker, who is 16, was babysitting his girlfriend's child when she went to work in a Springville home, which he shared with his parents. Later in the evening of that same day, Shoemaker did something terrifying. He beat the 23-month-old child until the child sustained multiple injuries, which eventually resulted in his death. Shoemaker was eventually arrested and charged with the murder of a toddler, along with multiple other charges, including child abuse. According to findings, Shoemaker was reportedly making an attempt to stop the toddler from crying, and he claimed he never wanted to hurt the child or take his life. However, the jurors didn't buy Shoemaker's story and believed it was an intentional attempt. And so, Shoemaker was convicted of second-degree murder as Shoemaker entered the courtroom. Even before he got a seat at the defense table, he was already seen tearing up and telling everyone in the courtroom how sorry he was. "I really didn't mean to kill Oscar. I didn't know. I really think I did, but I didn't mean to hurt him." While Shoemaker was awaiting his trial, he had a conversation with his mother, which was recorded. The judge then proceeded to read out the conversation Shoemaker had with his mother. "In your phone call to your mother from the holding center, you stated, and I quote from the court reporter, 'I'm a 16-year-old blonde. Probably all I have to do is cry in front of the jury, and they'll believe me and feel sorry for me. I can't take back what was done. I wish I could give my life for Austin." Shoemaker was eventually sentenced to 25 years, which was later modified and reduced to 18 years to life imprisonment. Jennifer Mee is a 19-year-old in the Pinellas County Justice Center. She was arrested for first-degree murder, but this isn't the first time Jennifer is claiming the spotlight. Back when Jennifer was 15, she had a case of something you might not even think exists: uncontrollable hiccups. She was even known as the Hiccup Girl. However, her hiccups finally got cured and the media no longer had interest in her. But it seems it's just written in the stars for Jennifer to be famous. Almost 4 years later, she got arrested for allegedly setting up a robbery with victims she had met online.
Year-old girl suffering from a peculiar ailment, nonstop hiccuping, but her innocent demeanor quickly changed after prosecutors convicted Jennifer Mee of murder. Now for the first time from behind bars and on the heels of...
She reportedly recruited her boyfriend, Lamont Newton, and another friend, Laren Rayford, to help rob victims. Mee lured a 22-year-old man she met online into a vacant home, and her two friends shot and killed the man, all for $50. The three friends and allies were all staying together and ended up getting arrested a few hours after their operation. When Mee first got arrested and was in jail, she had a phone call with her mom, where she confessed her involvement in a conversation that was recorded. In the call, Mee also claimed she didn't kill anyone. She was just there at the wrong time and in the wrong place. She also said to her mom, "I set everything up and it all went down wrong." However, the jury returned a guilty verdict, and Mee was found guilty of first-degree murder. She was sentenced to life in prison without parole, while being given 30 days to appeal. Her allies, Rayford and Newton, were also convicted of felony and first-degree murder and were sentenced to life in prison. Nicholas Lindsay is a 17-year-old from St. Petersburg who is appearing in Pinellas County Court for committing a crime that led him to be guilty of first-degree murder, resulting in life imprisonment. Amanda Crawford, the daughter of St. Petersburg police officer David Crawford, lost her father after a deadly confrontation with Nicholas Lindsay on February 21st. Officer Crawford responded to a call about a possible burglary near a field where the caller claimed to have seen a man holding a brick. The officer quickly arrived at the scene and, upon getting there, spotted the burglar, who was later identified as Nicholas Lindsay. Perhaps due to the fact that Lindsay was a teenager, Crawford deluded himself into thinking he had the situation under control. According to police reports, Nicholas Lindsay opened fire on David Crawford as the officer attempted to reach for a notepad. Every single shot Lindsay fired was exactly at the spot in which he aimed the gun at Crawford's body. Crawford did manage to release 6 rounds, but none of the bullets came into contact with Lindsay as he fled. Crawford was found by another officer who immediately called for medical support. However, it was too late, as David Crawford was pronounced dead at Bayfront Health Center. His death quickly made the news and led to a massive manhunt for the killer, which also drew interest from over 200 police officers from different agencies around Tampa Bay. The police received several tips that led to a raid on the apartment where Nicholas Lindsay lived with his mother. After finding out what had happened, Lindsay's mother persuaded him to man up and tell the cops what happened. And he did. He confessed to the killing of Officer David Crawford. In his confession, Lindsay claimed he had shot Crawford in the stomach with a gun he bought for $140 off the streets a week before the incident. The 16-year-old also told the police he couldn't remember how many times he fired at Crawford. It was, however, revealed later by the police that Lindsay fired 4 rounds at the unaware police officer before fleeing the scene and throwing the murder weapon into a creek. This case has attracted a lot of media attention because Crawford was the 3rd police officer to be murdered in St. Petersburg in the space of a month, which led to the courthouse being unsurprisingly packed with reporters the next day as Lindsay was formally charged with the murder of the police officer. Lindsay, who had been previously charged in juvenile systems, found a court murder trial unfamiliar territory for the teenager. Lindsay shockingly showed little emotion inside the courtroom as his father broke into tears and apologized to the relatives and friends of the murdered officer. The visibly disoriented father said, "On behalf of me, my son, and the entire family, we send our deepest condolences to his family and his colleagues that he worked with. This is my only son, and I'm sorry it happened." Officer Crawford's partner also spoke inside the courtroom and explained how difficult it is to forgive Lindsay, despite it being a required thing to do, according to his faith. After a week of trial, Lindsay was convicted of murder and sentenced to life imprisonment without the possibility of parole. Although he was tried as an adult, 17, his age was still pivotal in helping him avoid a death penalty. 2 years later, Lindsay's life sentence was upheld in court following an appeal, and everyone was shocked when Lindsay smiled on hearing the judge's ruling. This reaction especially shocked David Crawford's daughter, who was appalled by his lack of remorse. While speaking to reporters, Crawford's daughter called out Lindsay's behavior in court, saying it just proves that the convicted felon is an animal. Miller and Goodale, at just the age of 16, are both charged with the murder of their high school Spanish teacher over a bad grade, as reported. Miller: "We then moved her off of the trail where I struck her, and she died as a result." The pair attended Fairfield High School in southeastern Iowa. Naheema Graber was the Spanish teacher who gave Miller, one of her students, a bad grade. He and his friend Goodale then planned to kill her. "We discussed the general plan. I'll stand here as a lookout and wait for Miss Graber to show up," said Jeremy. Miss Graber went for her usual walk at the city park, where the boys knew she would be, and they stalked her to ambush her. As soon as she arrived, Miller hit her in the head, and in an attempt to ensure she was dead, he hit her a couple more times. They then dragged her into the woods and stomped her to death with a baseball bat. However, there wasn't a plan after that, as the boys simply hid her body and hoped no one would find it. But not long after, the boys were arrested, with alleged documents in the courts claiming that a witness who knew the pair showed law agencies Snapchat messages that proved Miller and Goodale were involved in the murder of their teacher. One of the Snapchat messages read, "You are my Spanish teacher, and this is the last thing you'll ever see." Jeremy later pled guilty and testified against his best friend Miller, stating, "I understood that he had the intent to kill Miss Graber." Goodale also spoke before his sentence and claimed to have had time to reflect on what he did. He also apologized and said every day he wishes he could go back and stop himself, and he can't comprehend the thought of losing a loved one the way his teacher's family did. The judge then handed down his judgment. The defendants shall be sentenced to life with possible parole after 25 years. As for Miller, who apologized before receiving the sentence and took responsibility for the role he played in the murder of his Spanish teacher, he pleaded with the family of the deceased to give him another chance, stating that he didn't want to be institutionalized and didn't want to be in for so long. He expressed that he looked forward to getting through the situation.
I would like to take this opportunity to wholeheartedly accept responsibility for the role that I've played in the murder of a human raper. I would like to apologize for my actions, first and foremost, to the family. I'm sincerely sorry for the distress that I've caused you and the devastation that I've caused your family. With all of my heart, I'm sorry for your loss.
The judge then passed judgment on Miller with life under parole for 35 years. Miller didn't seem fazed by the judgment.
Jeremy Goodale is set for August 23rd. Prosecutors are recommending a sentence between 30 years to life in prison with the possibility of parole.
Brandon Spencer was charged in the Los Angeles County Superior Court with 4 counts of attempted murder. Spencer, 19, attended a crowded Halloween party on the University of Southern California campus in Los Angeles, where gunshots suddenly went off, causing mayhem. Everyone scattered, while some ran in fear, others hid. Reportedly, Spencer also ran, but was stopped in a parking lot, where he was picked up by the Los Angeles Police Department for questioning. A couple of days later, Spencer was charged with 4 counts of attempted murder. He had injured 4 people, but fortunately, none of them died. He was so intent on killing the 4 people that he opened fire on a crowd.
That if you are so intent on killing someone that you're willing to shoot them and at the same time open fire into a crowd.
Prosecutors argued during the trial that the shooting was the result of a conflict between Spencer and a rival gang member. "I'm not a bad person, but I made a mistake," said Spencer. He maintained his innocence throughout the trial, but the jury didn't agree with him.
I'm not a bad person, but I made mistakes. I'm not just some gangbanger that she tried to portray me as.
Spencer had close to 50 family members and friends in the courtroom. As the judge read his sentence, Spencer kept banging his head on the defense table, forcing sheriff's deputies to restrain him. Spencer was sentenced to 4 years to life for attempted murder on 4 people. As an 18-year-old on trial for child abuse on a cold day in January 2022. Alexis was captured by CCTV cameras driving to a dumpster and disposing of what looked like a black garbage bag. 3 hours later, garbage drivers went through the same dumpster looking for goods and got confused when they started hearing faint screams from a black garbage bag. At first, they thought it was a cat trapped inside, but one of them opened the bag, revealing something terrifying. One of the drivers found a newborn baby wrapped in a cold, wet towel, whimpering and freezing to death. While April, the driver, was attending to the baby, others were calling 911 and reported the incident to local authorities, with one of the witnesses saying the baby still had an umbilical cord. The police arrived at the scene and secured CCTV footage before rushing the baby to a hospital. Miraculously, the baby survived, and Alexis was identified from the footage and arrested immediately. When she was brought in for questioning, she confessed to the crime, claiming she put the baby in a trash bag and, not knowing what to do, added the baby among other trash. She drove around for a bit before dumping the baby out of confusion. She also tried to defend herself by saying it wasn't on purpose and that she acted out of panic. Alexis seemed to be under the impression that she didn't do anything wrong and made a bizarre statement, saying she wasn't aware of her pregnancy but knew she was pregnant. That statement led authorities to believe she was lying and had acted on purpose. She was charged with attempted first-degree murder and child abuse. Alexis testified that she doesn't recall giving birth to the baby and claimed to have been in shock, saying she didn't remember disposing of the baby. However, the prosecutors weren't convinced by Alexis's story and made her admit to her crimes in front of the jury. Alexis claimed she only knew about her pregnancy a day before she dumped the baby, while Stephen Asga, Alexis's ex-boyfriend, claimed they had both known about the baby since April.
My healthy, my loving and handsome baby boy, he's never going to forget the things you did, but for that I can say that my son will be somebody one day no matter how much he has already been through.
The jury then reached a verdict that Alexis Avila was guilty of attempted first-degree murder and child abuse. Avila addressed the court and showed remorse, saying she was sad she'd miss every first milestone of the baby and had deprived him of motherly love. She was then sentenced to 16 years in prison. Which murderer do you think got a softer punishment than they deserved? Let us know in the comments, and if you enjoyed this video, then make sure to check out our next one shown on screen.